I've always loved that song. When it first came out, I remember sending it to my daughter Lydia, who loved to dance, but always was concerned people would make fun of her when she did. And so that song still brings me some tears, remembering that little child at the time doing that. Some of you know I make probably a daily post on Facebook. They're usually inspirational only because I feel like people need to be inspired and get a sense of hope more these days, more than ever. And post I made yesterday, I used the words of one of my favorite teachers and authors, Wayne Muller. And he said, "The heart of most spiritual practice is simply this: remember. Remember who you are. Remember what you love. Remember what is sacred. Remember what is true. Remember that you will die and that this day is a gift. Remember how you wish to live." Over the years, I've learned that dying is the most intimate spiritual work we will ever do. And that in the light of death, there truly is wisdom in living well. So Becky, when you said your meditation back to school didn't fit, it fits perfectly. Because right now, we're going back to school. I've always believed this: love calls you to make death your constant companion. Because the awareness of death helps you heal old wounds, it refines your purpose, and helps you lead a fearless and authentic life. I've had a lot of stories I've posted over the years. I brought this one with me, so I'll just share it as I posted it. And it was of the gentleman that I was told to go visit because he was 89. His 89-year-old girlfriend in an assisted living passed away. They had this beautiful love affair late in life, and she passed. And they wanted me to deliver the news to him. So here's what I wrote on that morning. "A week ago this morning, upon being notified at the death of a hospice patient, I was asked to share the news to the patient's 89-year-old boyfriend. Sitting across from him, his hand in mine, the tears were flowing down his face. He wasn't completely surprised by the news, but it still, quote, hurt his heart. He then looked up at me and shared how his dog had just passed a few weeks earlier. I had noticed an empty crate when I walked into his room. He asked if it was okay to cry for his dog as well. As I held his hand tighter, and now tears were flowing down my face, I responded, absolutely. And how about if I cry with you? And in that moment, no words were needed. Henri Nouwen wrote, be present to each other and experience in the depths the gift of life. To care means being where the suffering is. It's a way of living together so the mystery of life is revealed. Shortly after the famous psychologist Abraham Maslow suffered a near-fatal heart attack, he wrote in a letter this: the confrontation with death and the reprieve from it makes everything look so precious, so sacred, so beautiful, that I feel strongly than ever the impulse to love it, to embrace it, and to let myself be overwhelmed by it. My river has never looked more beautiful. Death and its ever-present possibility makes love, passionate love, more possible. And in one of my favorite books, came out years ago as a bestseller, it's called The Untethered Soul. Michael A. Singer writes this: it is truly a great cosmic paradox that one of our best teachers in all of life turns out to be death. No person or situation could ever teach you as much as death has to teach you. Learn to live as though you are facing death at all times, and you will become bolder and more open. If you live life fully, you won't have any last wishes. So here's what I've come to learn over the years as a pastor, chaplain, a fellow human being. Dying is a process of dropping roles. taking off social masks that many of us wear constantly, and maybe we're not even aware of it. We may in this lifetime surrendered our wholeness in order to get social approval. Death evokes wholeness. It gives a dying person permission toward wholeness, to say the things they've always wanted to say, to be the things they've always wanted to be. You see, many people think they have to do more to be whole, but we're already whole. Stop the doing. Stop the trying. I think we work too hard at spirituality. We just rest in the arms of God. And we learn along the way. Life has always been our best teacher. And I've learned in 21 years of hospice, death was my teacher. It taught me more about life and love and relationships than any podcast I ever listened to or hosted, any workshop I ever attended, any best-selling book I read. Because I learned it from the people who knew they don't have forever. In the light of death, there is wisdom in living and loving well. Being with people who are dying can offer us a sort of healing. Now dig this. Dying people give darshan. In the Hindu spiritual tradition, the guru sits before his students and begins to throw out candies and pieces of dried fruits, little bits of sweetness, which represent the sweetness of his teaching and his wisdom. And the students catch these candies, eat them, and by eating them, they're woven into the very fabric of who those students are. The wisdom and sweetness is woven because it is eaten. I think death is like that. Dying people have our attention because they're dying. Often dying people will say something to us or experience things in our presence that we will weave into the very fabric of our lives, and our lives will be better for it. I will always remember Barbara. Her and her husband both were on hospice. University Heights is where they lived, in Greenwood. And they were my patients. He passed first. They had no children. They were married 65 years, but they had each other. They were what you would call soulmates. So we did a lot of extra care for her. One particular day I'm driving to another facility and I got this intuitive hit, as we can often do, and it said, "You need to see Barbara." So I turned the car around thinking, well, I didn't get a text. I hope she's okay. I got to the facility. I walked into her room. She was sitting in her wheelchair looking out the window. Now they had a couple of bird feeders out there, so I assumed she was watching the birds. And as I got closer, I could tell her eyes were closed, and I said, "Barbara, it's Richard, the chaplain." She just nodded her head. And I knelt next to her. Her eyes were closed. There was a little smile on her face. And I said, "Barbara, what are you thinking?" And she said, "I'm writing a story in my head." And I said, "Tell me the story." And she said, "It's a story about how much my husband loved me." And once again, no words were necessary. I'd say about 10 minutes. I knelt, she sat, but I felt like we were communicating heart to heart, as when you work with people like that, you kind of learn to do that. We didn't need the words. Words would just get in the way. But by what they modeled, and by my experiences with her, and by her writing that love story in her head, it taught me so much about what it really is to have deep love with another, a soulmate, that you'll write stories in your head when they're gone. And I'll never forget that woman because of that. There was another experience I had. It's the only experience I've ever had, and why I needed to see that, I don't know. But it was an elderly gentleman. It was at a facility close to St. Vincent Hospital, and I was on this side of the bed. An aide was on the other side, and the facility nurse was at the foot of the bed. And he was really getting close to making this transition. He was beginning to see people up in the ceilings, which is normal. Actually, Hebrews 11 talks about that. The many clouds of witnesses looking down upon us, those are our loved ones. and I include my dogs in that too, looking down upon us. Well, they're looking down upon him, waiting for him to cross that threshold. When he took his last breath, I saw a vapor trace. That quick. My mouth dropped open. I looked at the aide. Her mouth dropped open. We both look at the nurse. Her mouth dropped open. We all saw it. And that just taught me, Richard, I believe in heaven. I believe in the afterlife. But it's ultimately all a mystery. I haven't died yet. I don't know what that's initially going to be. I've already shared with you what I want it to be. But I know it's beautiful. And I know all we are anyway is spirit or energy. Spirit, energy is the same thing in these tight shoes of a body. And at some point, boom, we are all going to be released because nobody gets out of here alive, folks. Death is always the most democratic thing. It'll take Republicans and Democrats. I'm not sure about libertarians, but it will take everybody because libertarians have this choice about things. But here's what I've learned looking back and reflecting. And as I get older, I've lost more friends, many younger than me. Couple are on hospice now, my age. One I dated for about 3 years, very close to her still. She finally got happily married, but now she's got cancer and made the news, and we texted back and forth. I've learned that dying well, listen to this, I've learned that dying well and living well is not a question of expertise and mastery. It's much more a question of trust and mystery, intimacy and love, a willingness to show up as the vulnerable human beings that we are. One of my favorite guests on the show is John Shelby Spong. I loved his mind, how he thought. And in his book, Jesus for the Non-Religious, he shared this based on John 10:10 when Jesus says, I came to give you life and life abundantly. I think we forget that scripture. But he interpreted it this way. He said Jesus came to earth to teach just 3 things. That got my attention, like E.F. Hutton. 3 things. To live fully, to love wastefully, and to have the courage to be all that you can be. Now think about that. Everyone in this room, children next door, all have talents and gifts that we all need. And when we use our talents and gifts, and so many people, we put ourselves down, lack of self-love, we don't think we have anything to offer. You do. When we do that and bring it together in this faith community, it's like a beautiful harmony being played. Certain people can do this, certain people can do that. But I began to see, as a guy who was a former bookaholic, that the answers weren't really in all the books. The answers were in life. Life is my guru. Life is my teacher. Jesus I follow passionately. And Jesus still has a few moves in his dance that I'm still trying to learn. But I love that. And here's another observation I made. We'll take a deep dive with this. My friend John Guare, when he taught psychology at IUPUI, every year he'd have 1 semester of interns. And he always had me come in every year, and we spent an hour and a half talking about 3 questions with these interns. And what I've discovered in all the years I've served as a pastor, hospice chaplain, friend, that when people are in their bed, and maybe they're beginning to make a transition, but they're cognizant, and they're talking. You know, I've never heard anyone ever ask, do you think I should have built a bigger home? I never heard anyone say, oh my God, why didn't we make it to Hawaii? I should have spent money. I never heard anybody say, we should have built or bought that faster car or truck. The things that we often think about in our lives that we save for, that we work for, nobody asked anything about that, because when you know your time is done, and I've not had a doctor look into my face and say, I'm sorry to tell you, like Nancy did recently, my friend, and say, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're terminal. I mean, that's a wake-up call. I've always heard them ask at least 1, if not all 3 of these questions. And they might ask it differently, but you could put it under each of these categories. I've heard them ask, am I loving well? Because all of a sudden they realize, I'm running out of time. I kind of knew that, but I really didn't. But I know I am now. Am I loving well? And they start thinking about family. They start thinking about kids, grandkids. They start thinking about friends that they used to hang out with and they lost touch with. They start thinking about relationships. And sometimes they're in agony when they say, did I love well? And so what I've learned from that is every night, true story, it's by habit now, when I head hits the pillow, I say, well, Richard, today, did you love well today? Did you love well? And it helps me reflect on maybe my actions or attitudes. Second question, am I living fully? Am I living fully? Back when I was a life purpose coach, I would have a couple of times some very busy, successful executives, and they would come in exhausted. And they were frustrated because they were spending so much money climbing a corporate ladder, building a company, that they lost touch with their family. They didn't know how to slow down. They didn't know how to pull back. They didn't know how to set boundaries. Living fully. When was the last time you danced under a full moon? Like I noticed this morning on the drive up, and I love days like today. I look for them. But when there's a full moon, I always pray the next morning that it's clear so you can see the full moon here and the sun here. There's something about that that brings a little boy in me out. I just want to get out of the damn car and dance. But I was driving, so I'm glad I didn't. Although this is funny, I was playing some buttons. I was trying to hit the reset on my mileage. I'm driving up here last week, and I hit the car. It went off. And I thought, oh my God, I'm on Meridian. Well, now I know it doesn't just stop suddenly, it coasted. And so I didn't plan on sharing this, not on my notes, sorry. But am I living fully? I'm really big on this because I've been around this for so long. I mean, when I got up this morning, I looked in the mirror and I remembered a guy with dark hair and lots of it, and he doesn't exist anymore. What did you like to do when you were a kid? What did you love to do? What were you passionate about? Start doing it. We all need to be more goofy. We all need to be more playful. And I think when adults do that, I've learned more from my grandkids than anything else because they are wild as March hares, but I love that energy. Last time I jumped on the trampoline with them, it was 2 years ago. Grandpa, get on the trampoline. So I got on the trampoline with them. We're having a great time, and I'm bouncing up and down and falling. And the next day, I couldn't get up. I thought I broke my hip. I went in to see the doctor. I couldn't drive 15 minutes without crying. And the doctor took an x-ray, and he came in and he said, well, the good news is your hip is not broken, it's just bruised. But the bad news is I can't give you a pill for stupid. So I'm not on the trampoline anymore, although my heart is when I watch them. And then finally, the last question, which I've been told in workshops is the hardest question of all. And that is, am I learning to let go? Letting go of he did, she did me wrong 15, 20 years ago. Letting go of past failures. Letting go of past mistakes. Letting go. Letting go. And every time I even say that phrase, I just do this automatically. Because it reminds me, if I can let go of all those things that are actually chaining my soul down, keeping me from flying as high and as far as I'm destined to go, same with all of you, because fear is a real thing we have to overcome. That when we do that, we can start walking lightly on the earth. And as some of us joked today as we were trying to get organized, yeah, just go with the flow. Just let it go. There's truth in that, man. Because you know what? I'm looking around this room. We're all alive. We're here. We're here for such a time as this. We need to take advantage of that as much as we can. And so that brings me to the most powerful experience I've had in my life. June 16th, 2000. I had just started hospice maybe 8 months prior. I saw a patient down in Franklin, June 16th. It was summer rain, nice summer rain, not a torrential downpour. And as I hit 65, heading north, somewhere between Franklin and Whiteland, my car hydroplanes. I start doing 360-degree circles. I'm trying to get control. Anyone who's ever hydroplaned, I never have since, it's impossible to control your car. I'm thinking my car's going to roll. Every time, this is seconds all this happened, every time the car is heading south, I see a semi-truck coming and 3 cars. True story. Now, I don't know if I said it audibly or privately. I took my hands off the wheel and I said, this is it, and I closed my eyes. Somehow, I ended up on the side of the road. I heard brakes squealing, truck rushing by. He couldn't stop. There was 2 cars behind me. I'm hearing the rain hit my metal roof. I'm hyperventilating. Only time I've ever hyperventilated. And I'm thinking, dear God, dear God. And so I kind of roll the window down and do one of these things. I'm thinking they're hyperventilating too, the people behind me. So I stay off on the side of the road. I drive maybe 35 miles an hour to the Greenwood exit. I was living in Greenwood at the time. I get back to my place. I plop down on the floor and I break down. And I wept. And then I got angry. I got angry at God. God, how dare you take me this close? I took my hands off the damn wheel. I said, this is it. And why am I alive? I'm going to have to go through this again? That's what I remember thinking. And then I started thinking, because I knew just enough about trying to look at things for a lesson. And I said, well, what am I to learn from this? What am I to learn from this? And I realized the rain was outside. And I realized, Richard, when you're a little boy, you used to love to walk in the rain. Why did you stop? So I got up with all my clothes on, little nice shoes on, and walked for 45 minutes in the Valley Vista area, walking in the rain. And I had, before the movie came out, a Shawshank Redemption moment. I did this, felt the rain on my face, every drop. It went back to my place, got in, took a hot shower, got out, remembered a friend. It's kind of a gag gift, but I do love her music. Gave me the best of Donna Summer CD. So I started dancing naked to Donna Summer. I mean, I feel love, working hard for the money. I was working it, girl. Nobody else was there could see me. I didn't care. I was dancing. And then I realized this is like something sacred's happened. I got to learn from this. So the adrenaline's pumping, go into the kitchen area, and I felt like I needed to have the pastor in me. I needed to have like communion. So I poured a glass of Malbec wine. I had a chocolate chip cookie, and I sat down on the floor again. This time I put my sweats on and t-shirt, and I had my little sacred communion with the wine and cookie. And then I'm thinking, what else? I turned. This was when I was a bookaholic. And on my vast bookshelf, there was a book. Like, it almost glowed. And I just bought it, hadn't read it yet. I pulled it off the shelf. And you did one of those things where you take your thumb and just open it up to a page. Well, the book happened to be How Then Shall We Live? 4 simple questions to reveal beauty and meaning in your lives by Wayne Muller. 4 chapters, 4 questions. I turned to the chapter titled, Knowing We Will Die, How Shall We Live? Now understand, I just went through this whole traumatic experience. I should have died in that car wreck. Why the car got spared, I felt like God lifted it, put it off the side of the road. All of this is happening. I turned to this page and still have it marked. I carry it with me all the times. And by the way, every June 16th is my Celebrate Life Day. And I'll always do something different each day, but usually involves beating on a drum, reading this, probably having a glass of wine. A couple times when I was in that place, I bought a fine cigar, forgive me. But anyway, out in the woods kind of a thing. Don't do that now. But here's what I read. I want you to listen to these words. With so little time left, there is none to waste. Suddenly, childhood trauma seems less compelling. Money seems useful for daily needs, but greed seems silly. What can we really keep? Unproductive relationships are let go, and intricate career maneuvering seem wasteful, even comical. For those close to death, it becomes instantly clear that everything they do in their remaining days is precious. Every conversation, every action, every choice is pregnant with meaning and value. Only those relationships that are fruitful and loving are kept. The rest are allowed to fall away. Every act, is a sacrament. Every breath is a gift. Nothing is taken for granted. Nothing wasted. What kind of life will we have? A human birth is a breathtaking gift. This singular life is a pearl of great price. How will we use this precious time? Sloppily careening from one day to the next, getting things done, checking off lists, buttressing our lives against trouble as best we can until we die weary and wondering whether we were ever awake, ever truly alive at all? Or shall we live not by accident, but on purpose, naming clearly and courageously those things we cherish, creating a life of beauty and love? Will we walk on the earth gently? Will we care for our children with understanding and wisdom? Will we seek out beauty and give thanks for it? Will we be generous with our talents for the good of all? Will we be patient and thoughtful with others? Will we be courageous in speaking what we know to be true? Will we be awake and alive? Will we leave a legacy of kindness? Knowing we will die, how shall we live? And so what I've been learning, not learned, is to slow down. Slow down my mind. Start appreciating the beauty all around me. And when we ask those questions, am I loving well? Am I living fully? And am I learning to let go? And we start getting more yeses and nos, then we will know what it's like to have the art of living in the light of death. Amen.